purpose of this is to get get some thoughts down, get some quotes down. So for the summer exhibition, as you know, it will feature the art of you, Eduardo, and Manon, and which would be super cool. But it will also have history about Lighthouse Art Center. So I'm also working on didactics for that, and I want to have some really interesting didactics about you guys and to tell a bit more of your story, what you would want to say about your story, your art, and your experience with Lighthouse. But I'm not great at interviews, so this will be pretty informal. It'll be more so just about hopefully getting some interesting things for you to talk about, and and if there's anything that I miss, anything that, even if it's not in the question, that you want to tell that you think would help explain your art or your journey or anything, please share away. And if there's anything you want to, if you say it and then you decide that you wouldn't want that to be said, just let me know, and I'll take anything off.
Well, first off, I apologize for my voice.
I understand.
It really just diminished this morning,
Yeah.
So,
well,
I feel good, and other than my voice not being strong enough, if you find that you can't understand me, let me repeat it. So no problem.
Perfect. And if it is if at any point it gets too, you're talking too much and it hurts too much, we can try again next week and see if your voice is feeling better. We can just play it by ear. It's all very casual, and just to tell you about the direction. My husband is, I don't know if you just saw that, he's going rollerblading. The direction I wanted to go in for stuff about the about Lighthouse Art Center, I've stumbled upon some really interesting history, essentially, that it really was started. It was started by the community, and the idea was that it would be led by volunteers. And then it kept growing, and so I really want to emphasize community and connection. And I personally, that's one of the things I think I miss most about Lighthouse Art Center is the feeling of community. I think it's once you're not there, I think you understand how special it is, and that place of community isn't everywhere. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about with the history. That's like the direction kind of going in there. Well, let's just get started with you. I'll stop talking. And I have some questions that I think will be, I hope will be nice for you. But first, I'm just curious, when did you start, when did you start doing art?
I've been drawing and painting since I was old enough to hold a pencil. So, my mother, I used to think that she exaggerated, but she would tell me that I would sit on my father's lap at like 2 or 3 years old, and he would show me how to make objects out of numbers, So I remember distinctly of making a fire engine out of the number 5 and a couple of other numbers. But I thought I was older, but my mother told me I was 3 years old. And I exhibited a talent for it and an interest for it at that age. I can tell you, as a kid, all the way up through my teens, I was, the word my wife would use is I was obsessed with it. I would use it, I was a passion at it. I loved it. Rainy days where I was cooped into the house. I didn't have to go out and play with my friends, and I would just draw and draw and draw. And to me, it was everything, it would occupy my time. It would imagine my imagination. And I can tell you that my earliest memories, right after World War II, I was born in actually 1939, just a year of the movie Gone with the Wind,
Mhm.
Casablanca, and some great movies that were put out that I didn't know till later on.
Mhm.
But post World War II, every home, we were all poor, but we were in neighborhoods where we didn't know we were poor.
Mhm.
And it was just wonderful because everybody was in the same boat. And there used to be people would come around and sell encyclopedias, you know. So here was a time every home had to have an encyclopedia. Well, my mother and father bought, we were three boys. I was the middle child, my older brother Michael, and then my younger brother Vincent. And I was the art one, but I was always drawing. We had our own friends. We didn't really do a lot of things together. That encyclopedias, I used to rip the pages, you know, the blank pages
Uh-huh.
out and
Uh-huh.
draw on them because I didn't have drawing paper. And I used to sneak it so my parents didn't know that I was tearing the inside pages and the outside pages and drawing on them.
Mhm.
But I found out later on they knew all along. But that's what I would do is draw things from from the encyclopedias and draw things that were um, classical things of the past that interested me.
Wow.
And so there was a passion from the very beginning, and it carried all the way up through my teens. And in my school, in grammar school in New York City, I was in. Grew up in East Harlem. I was like the class artist and the artist in the neighborhood, and my artist for the family. I didn't know whether I was good or not, but I enjoyed doing it.
Yeah.
In school, I would be the one that would be on the step stool with a ladder and other things, drawing on the chalkboards in tempera paint
Wow.
and paint. So Columbus Day would be the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria, and all the holidays I would do the boards. I really had difficulty in reading and writing because I was missing a lot of the lessons. I would hear them, but I was not participating in them. So I was always the artist. I used my art to sort of help me in the areas that I had trouble with was reading and writing comprehension.
Mm.
I wound up in my high school as the valedictorian in my high school, really not being good at reading and writing. I would have to read things 3 or 4 times to really comprehend them, and I didn't know I was suffering from that, you know. But I worked extra hard at compensating or trying to hide that I had difficulty reading and writing. And it wasn't until I got into the business world where I started to break out of that.
Mhm.
But the art, I realized, is such a subject that overflows into every subject in life.
Mhm.
It has no bounds. I teach young kids mathematics through art lessons of geometry and how geometry turns into how your right side of your brain works in figuring out where the center of things are, where is perspective and what have you. So I am fascinated with art is to me synonymous with life and living. If I had to have one subject that I was choosing, that would be the one. I can tell you this: I've always painted. I paint. I have a book of my paintings that I put together a number of years ago, and I put them in chronological order. The 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, in these 10-year periods, look at them and you say, oh my God, what happened between here and here?
Mhm.
And you realize that some things in your life transpire that change how you see things
Mhm.
or change how you want to represent them. And what I really find is I respected each of the periods and I loved what I did then, but I can't go back and do them anymore.
Mhm.
It would be false. Like for me, I'm in a different place each time. But I find it fascinating to go from period to period to period.
Mhm.
I also examine what in my life made me change. And I didn't know I changed until I looked back.
Mhm.
I'll give you an example. one in 1978, and this will probably tie you in a little bit. 1978, of course, I was working many jobs to support a family and what have you, because on art, it doesn't cut the mustard. You'll have ups and downs. No matter how good you are, it'll be very difficult to plan your life and support others, yourself. You can go without eating for a few days, and it's not a hardship. But you can't ask your children or your wife, hey, relax a little bit. Next week we're going to have food, or we're going to have a place to stay tomorrow. It wouldn't work with me. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do that. They might be able to do it, but I couldn't ask for that. So in 1978, I was working in telecommunications. My father always told me, always have another job. Don't just be an artist. Your wife will leave you and you'll have nothing, what have you. And it's so true. So I went for engineering as a supplement, and I worked for Verizon, Northern Telecom, Fujitsu, a lot of telecommunications. So in 1978, I was asked to go to Iran. When the Shah was still there, and it was on the last leg of the republic there. And I was there maybe a year with my family. Then it fell apart. The Ayatollah was upsetting everything, and we had to leave. I went to Amsterdam on the last plane out of Iran with my family, and we went to Amsterdam, and we stopped at the Van Gogh Museum and the in The Hague and what have you. It was, I guess the thing is, when I was in Iran is like maybe New Mexico, very bright and light and high ceilings, not like New York where the ceilings are lower and what have you, and it's sort of dark and dismal most of the time. It's bright and light in Iran, in Tehran. I was painting there, particularly during the revolution, where we couldn't go out. I was locked into the house doing my paintings of my family and what have you. And looking back on those, that was a radical change in my work from leaving New York and what have you. And you could see it. And I didn't see it at the time until I looked back on it. All of these things of, when I got married, when my father died, we see in those periods of all the paintings. I have the book I have has probably 300 selected paintings in it, pretty much chronologically, going from drawings and then pretty much monotone paintings, because I didn't like color. I thought color detracted from the energy of what you were trying to say. And I would limit my use of coloring. When I went to the Art Students League, the professors would tell me, and they wouldn't tell me outright, because I thought I knew everything then. I thought I loved, like, Rembrandt was my hero then, and Vincent van Gogh. So two Dutch people, and I didn't like the use of color because I thought it was sort of artificial and taken away from the message. My instructor said, he would pass by and look at my work and what have you, and I'd be going to the Art Students League mainly to paint models. I couldn't afford to have some models, so I used to go Tuesdays and Thursdays and paint the models. And I really didn't look for anything from him. I was hoping he'd pass me by, just not talk to me, because I thought I knew everything. And he said to me, he said, Ralph, maybe you ought to try a little more color in your paintings, like color. And he moved on. He didn't say anything more. And then it sort of hit me. I said, well, maybe the way he suggested it wasn't an affront. I started to use some color in it and started mixing some reds and yellows into things, more so into the painting. I said, wow, this is changing things. And after that, it changed, But all of these things, you look for what led to the transition. And I'd love to see all artists lay out their work in a chronological sequence and discover this for themselves as to what went on in their lives. It's fascinating. Vincent van Gogh, who I give lectures on him because I'm so enthused. I've never met a person, just in reading his letters, how honest and open he was. He had no ego, and when I was in the Navy, I used to write home and I'd exaggerate some things to my mother and father.
You're fine.
My wife will pick that up. So, but I used to, and maybe most people tend to exaggerate or not. In reading his letters, it's almost like he had a little bit of autism, where he only knew how to be very direct and honest. Reminds me of my cousin who has a high autism. She's very much like that. Like if my wife said, if she asked my wife what time we're going to eat, my wife would say 4 o'clock. We're going to have dinner. She'd be there exactly at 4, right in front of my wife, and said, "You said we were eating at 4." The confrontation. And that's the way Vincent Van Gogh, when you read his letters, you get that feeling like he didn't know how to be devious or how to read body language or what have you. So I think besides some of the other things he suffered from, it was the most honest person I've ever experienced. And I have the book of his letters on my nightstand up on my bed, and I usually read 2 or 3 letters a night. And I'm always astounded. I painted my whole life, and I love that, but I didn't start teaching it till I came down to Florida. I started teaching at Old School Square maybe 20 years ago. I taught a drawing class that somebody asked me to fill in for somebody who was sick. I wasn't sure I would like it because I somehow, you remember, well, there are those who do and there's those who teach, and I that stuck in my brain like, well, if I know I can paint, well, I'd rather paint than teach, where maybe I'm teaching something I don't know. I learned so much from teaching, particularly I had to really know what I was talking about. And I really had to find out why did I do things the way I did them? And there are other ways to do them, which can be just as good. And so I had to not only explain why I did them that way, I had to know the other ways of doing that as well. So I learned in 20 years a tremendous amount, and also dealing very much with the psychology. So someone who's very passionate about art and believes that art is very personal. I'm not one to paint just roses or flowers or things that are pretty pictures. I'm mainly interested in expressing myself as to the things that are most important to me in my life and the people in my life and how I can present them. And I encourage in my art when I talk to students, this you'll like, Annie. Every class I remind them, I started out teaching a drawing class, but it went into what we call an alla prima painting, where they finish everything all in one session. And another Dutch painter, Rubens, why did the Dutch painters influenced me so much? Rubens was one of the masters of alla prima and painted very large and the first layer would be a thin layer, then you beef it up and what have you. And here you have these 5 foot by 7 foot large paintings on canvas, and you never really thinking of them as alla prima, but that's to him and his apprentices would do that. So the alla prima meant to me is more spontaneous. It's more from the heart. You become one with the painting. So you first learn to see accurately, and a lot of people don't see accurately. They're using the left side of the brain, which thinks it sees and tells you what you're seeing, but it's not the one that you see. So if you see accurately, and then you can make this look like that, and if it doesn't look like that, look at the two and say, which one do I like better, and why? If you don't have a why or a reason, it's haphazard. You're not sure why you like something, so you're not really analyzing it. You really get good at analyzing your own work. You really get good at what I tell them is, I'm back teaching now, and I teach the Old School Square is closed down for the last 3 years because the city screwed them up and just closed it down. I was teaching at the Boca Museum Art School, the Armory Art Center, and the Lighthouse Art Center. And I do one class in each place each week, mainly to reach out to people that are interested in Alla Prima and interested in painting to their heart.
Yeah.
And they may not understand what's in their heart right now. So I try to get them, think of it this way: the people that are important to you, or people in your life that you didn't meet but you know of, your great grandfather who you died before you were born, and you might have heard stories of them, or your grandmother or what have you. Look for a black and white photo or a sepia photo of them, put them in a folder. Get these photos of where you live, or places or things that were important in your life, because only you have that experience. Nobody else can paint your life like you could paint it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can teach you how to paint where you think you may not be able to do it. Every human being has the ability to do this. And to me, my motivation is to get you to paint a grandparent or granduncle's picture where, even if it doesn't come out exactly like him,
Mm-hmm.
and it looks good as a person, it stands alone, and you write Grandpa so and so, 1913, what have you,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sorry I never met you personally, and you put it into your things where 100 years from now, 5 generations, your great grandniece or grandchild picks up that painting and says, "Oh my God, this is the most treasured possession I have of my great grandmother painting her grandfather or great grandfather, and here it is." That will be the measure of what the person was, not so much the photograph anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Picasso painting Gertrude Stein. She commissioned him to paint a portrait, and it took him quite a while to do it before he even showed it to her. And when he showed it to her, she says, "That doesn't look like me." And he said these famous words, "It will." So the painting will look more like the person than the photograph because it's coming from within.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of the reasons why I teach, is to reach people so that they can influence their lives and the next generations of their lives, and to really prove that they can do this, and not to compare themselves with anybody else in the class. Just sign and date everything they do and look at the transition as they grow, and they'll see their life in pictures, their life in paintings. It's so fascinating that I can influence others to try it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? There's to me nothing worse than working on the same painting week after week after week and tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it, because you're not learning anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Most of your learning is in the early stage of laying out your composition and just starting the painting, getting the first layer on there, alla prima. And your brain can hold that information. It won't be able to hold the tweaking because it's boring.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like doing shading and what have. The brain's going to go to sleep, the right side. That's where the teaching has become just as much an influence as the painting itself. So I was a little bit long-winded there, but
No, it was so good, wonderful. I have so many ideas and questions floating in my mind. That was wonderful.
so I was a little bit long-winded there, but
No, it was so good, wonderful. I have so many ideas and questions floating in my mind. That was wonderful. I'm hearing a lot of I'm hearing your between your interview and Eduardo's. I'm hearing what the similarities are between authenticity and your it seems like you care deeply about family and connecting that. But do you see a through line? You said that your paintings change so much, and it's kind of incredible to think that you didn't used to use color, because I view you as a very colorful painter. And do you see like a through line in your work, or has it been extremely different during these different periods of change, or do you see? Yeah,
very, very different.
mm-hmm.
Even at the time, I didn't notice what the change was.
Yeah.
I think I'm just doing something. I always liked experimenting
Mm-hmm.
and trying some things new. With the color, for instance, where I loved, things that were very much low light, Rembrandt and
Yeah.
settings and drawings. I felt drawing was so important. In fact, I remember reading Vincent van Gogh's letter to his brother Theo.
Mhm.
He's 2 years into drawing and working in The Hague, and he says to his brother, I'm not rushing into painting. I feel drawing is the most substantial part of being an artist, and it's so important. He says, but I did get into painting a little bit, and I realized that if I just use the primary colors and white, all right, I can make 80 something, I think he said 85% of all the other colors. Well, I got to tell you, I thought I discovered that. And I used to tell my students that just use the primary colors and you will learn how to mix color and you will learn how to use color. And because I'll tell you, when I was young, I didn't understand the color theory. Nobody showed it me. I was pretty much self-taught until I went to the Art Students League, and then I absorbed from looking at others. But nobody explained the color wheel. Nobody explained that it was um, taking with light through a
Mhm.
prism, looking at the spectrum of light,
Mhm.
and then that into a color wheel. It was Isaac Newton that first did that, and that gave us the understanding of complementary colors. So if you look at where red is on the wheel and you look at where green is, they're complements. You mix them together, you get a beautiful red, green, gray, and any complement, it makes beautiful grays.
Yeah.
And it just teaches you so much natural way of mixing colors. So here again, I thought I learned, and I look at Vincent van Gogh, how brilliant he was, where he failed as a preacher, he failed as an art dealer, and as an artist, he ticks people off because he's so intense,
Mhm.
and his intensity and his brilliance is what, and his honesty of being very direct is what other people couldn't tolerate.
Mhm.
Uh, and I didn't realize how brilliant he was until I read his letters,
Mhm.
and he said, just use the primary colors
Mhm.
and I will master the color. And look at his
Mhm.
colors. And you look at the one really large painting, the Potato Eaters, which is, he wrote to his brother Theo saying, I'm doing this painting where I'm going down with the coal miners and in their homes, and I'm painting them at the table eating their bread. It was my favorite painting outside of what Rembrandt did.
Mhm.
And then a couple of years later, he's going into brilliant color. And not to go back and say that painting wasn't genius level and emotional.
Mhm.
First person to put emotion into painting.
Mhm.
Before that, any kind of emotion in or thick paint was considered amateurish, or the salon in France would reject it if you had any raised surfaces. So when the Impressionists started putting thick paint on there, they were rejected, or it looked like it was impressionistic.
Yeah.
But
Amazing.
I find particularly Vincent van Gogh, there's no bravado.
Mhm.
It's very meaningful, direct, no extra additives thrown in there. And you know what, Annie? I just read a book
Yeah.
called "The Secret Life of Sunflowers,"
Oh, beautiful.
and it's about Joanna van Gogh.
Oh.
Without her, we would not know of Vincent van Gogh today.
Mhm.
It's a novel. It's not like a biography.
Mhm.
She wrote the novel. It's very accurate to the letters of Vincent van Gogh. But a year after she wrote it, the family of Joanna van Gogh released her diary. So these are fascinating things that sort of came through the Van Gogh Museum, and you learn so much about what's transpired and what's going on.
Mhm.
I try to teach in my teaching. I tie in the knowledge that I have of other artists, the paintings that they did, and what the impact of that painting was on society at the time. Going back to, you take Monet,
Mhm.
being one of the main Monet and Manet being maybe the key leaders of the Impressionist movement. But Monet painted in 1870 Le Havre harbor in France, a sunrise. It was totally rejected by the critics and the people, all saying, "Oh my God, that's not a painting. That's just an impression. It's unfinished. It's not." And that's where the name Impressionism came from. Monet's painting of the sunrise at Le Havre. So I gave that to my class a couple of weeks ago. I says, "Let's look at this," and it's leading into Impressionism, into modern art. So I mean, all of this history. I'll have one quote, and I know I'm jumping around a little bit.
It's great.
You cannot really understand where you're going or where you want to go unless you know where you've been and where you are. So unless you know where you've been and looking at your past and seeing what was triggering you at the different things and what's triggering you right now today, then you have a better understanding of where you're going and you can direct your paintings. And I look at that saying, I think I said it in my note when you asked what questions. I say I have a better understanding by looking at the past work, the present work, where I have a good understanding of where I want to go. I won't lock myself into where I want to go. I leave it open where I can sort of jockey my way around.
It's amazing that you say that. That's actually understanding where we were to understand where we are to understand where we're going. This was like the foundation of I studied sociology, and that was like the foundation of sociology is to that you have to understand, and I've always loved that personally and societally.
I said that to my two granddaughters who are in college now.
Okay.
Both very sweet. Said, I'm not crazy about history. Class, I don't know, it's boring. And they would give me some scenario about the teacher being boring. I says, there's nothing about the past about boring. There's no such thing as a boring thing. Gotta find the interest in things and make yourself connected to it where you feel like you're part of it. And you cannot, I'm just making sure my wife isn't here right now. My wife will say, you spent too much time in the past. And I says, no, I need to jump into each one, past, present, and future. And I think I almost spend equal times in each. And it's fascinating.
It's beautiful. Speaking of that, I think for this exhibition, I think you should definitely have that book. Because I would love to have, again, I think it'd be very cool to see the progression, especially, again, it's still kind of mind blowing that you ever used to not use color. For me, knowing your art now, so I'll just ask the question. What do you want people to feel when they view or experience your art? Or think or feel? What do you want them to experience?
A very good question, because I think, like all the great artists that come to mind, it's not the technical quality of the work, where it's super photographic. And to me, the last thing, maybe when I was young, I was more interested in the details and making this look like that, I look at it today as being, not a good use of time to put more into something once you got the essence of it. I like them to look at the painting, number one, that the composition of the painting grabs them. I like them to see in that composition that they can see the artist, that the artist comes through, where this painting can only have been done by this person, where it's unique. Just thinking about Edward Hopper, for instance, you're not seeing it in brushstrokes or exciting, so you're seeing it in subject matter where it's deep into, if you have three people in a painting, the three people are absorbed in their own lives. They're not communicating to each other. It's almost like something that I remember when I was in my 20s of existentialism. There was a French author named Albert Camus. I don't know if they study him in college anymore, but that was required reading when I was in college. Albert Camus, an existentialist. He didn't care what anybody think of him. You know who you are and what you're doing, and nobody's going to make you change, you know. And I think that's important to be who you are. Annie, I did something when I was teaching at Old School Square. It was surprising to me at the time. I had, I did large paintings of my three artists that were totally different from each other, that I respected immensely. Vincent van Gogh, Edward Hopper, and Pablo Picasso. And I did large ones of them with all their families and people in it, you know. And I did it mainly to explain to my students things on perspective. So the one of Vincent van Gogh was a single vanishing point perspective, where everything in the room, he's in his alls, he's sitting in his chair, he's got his three paintings on the floor that big stories with them. The Starry Night, the only painting that sold in his lifetime, which was Red Vineyards, and I forgot what the other one was right now. And his ceiling, there's no ceiling in the room. It's open to the starry night sky, and the window behind him is open to the starry night. And all the paintings in the room are pretty much what he had in his room, in his drawings and painting. But there's a room in front of his where all the people that he painted, including Gauguin, who he lived with in the yellow house in Arles, they're there in front of him, and he's sitting looking at these paintings on the floor and saying, one of the quotes from one of his letters, "Why do I paint? No one likes what I do." And this is toward the end of his life, where he only sold one painting, and he was starting to get recognition in his last year or so. So I did Van Gogh, then I did Picasso, and then I did Edward Hopper. And each one is a different on perspective, but not only perspective in from somebody looking out from their life up to where they are, but looking into a visual perspective of how you visually see rooms and things. But when I found out, here these three people are brilliant artists. They're nowhere near alike. They're totally different, not only in style of painting, but in personality as to what drives them. They would never get along together, none of them. Hopper was also one with no ego, but he was 6'5", and he just painted paintings that Picasso thought he was the center of the world. That's how he grew up. And he 80 something years, and watching the 20th century go by in events, him being the most influential painting of our times. So what I found out from them, the importance is when I look at other people's work, I can see the artist in the work. That tells me there's honesty and openness. The artist is not trying to be another artist. And can you imagine if Van Gogh painted like Picasso, or Picasso painted like Van Gogh, or Hopper painted, and they all did the same things that drove each their boring. So to me, the difference is the individuality of people is what drives me in art. I would think it would be terrible for people to be painting the same way and the same subjects all the time. That's why I tell them, only in your training of trying to learn should you be painting the masters and other things, so that you're learning, that you're seeing accurately, and you're able to do this. Now look back on yourself and see what's driving you, what's important to you, and pick those things in your life. And you will be an artist that's unique. And that will be in fact, when you look at these paintings, no painting from a contemporary artist is worth more, a contemporary living artist, more than maybe $100,000 or $200,000. You go beyond that, it's all about the story.
Mhm.
Story that's generated, and if it's a true story where the artist is painting true to their hearts and the things about it, those paintings will now be worth at some time later 500,000, $1 million, 2 million.
Yeah.
It's when somebody buys that painting, puts it on their wall, and can talk about what drives me. I like that painting so much. I know about the artist. I know what the painting, where it's done, and what the subject matter is, where it is,
Mhm.
and now I can talk about it for the rest of my life.
Yeah. I keep asking you questions about yourself, and you go towards I think the humility that you admire in some of these other artists. I mean, you have yourself.
I didn't think of that all the time, but I I'm driven by that we're all different.
Yeah.
If we can learn to express ourselves visually and honestly,
Hmm.
like the examples of the great masters of the time.
Yeah.
I'm reading another book now, and I find these books very fascinating. There's one called "The Private Lives of the Impressionists,"
Hmm. Hmm.
and it's based on a lot of the letters that they wrote to each other, a lot of the news articles of the 1870s and 1880s. So it's pretty factual. And what I was surprised about, I mean, I thought I knew the Impressionists fairly well before, but I learned all the intricacies of what they liked or didn't like about each other. Like,
Interesting.
it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Like the two women that were very big in the Impressionist movement were Berthe Morisot, who was a good friend of Degas, and Manet.
Hmm.
Fact, Berthe, she wound up marrying Manet's brother. She was, and she was a wonderful artist, painting like mothers and child, and very well respected. And then it was Mary Cassatt, who was a American painter,
Yeah.
and she would go to France. Mary Cassatt wound up making the Impressionists famous. She brought the paintings to America, and when the Americans started buying Impressionist painting, the French really woke up to buying it as well. So it's almost like seeing things with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
So reading those books and reading those private lives and no, I never knew, and I don't think a lot of people knew that Manet died at age 50.
Mm.
He never exhibited with the Impressionists, although he's thought of being the father of Impressionists, and he had some wonderful paintings. But he wound up having, I think it was a case of syphilis, which in those days was very
Yeah.
prevalent.
Yeah.
He wound up limping. His leg was really a problem. He had to have his leg amputated about 6 months before he died. And just the things in the letters and the things of his friends, seeing him go through that,
Hmm.
and a great when he died, they had a not a celebration in the streets
Hmm.
in Paris down, and it's almost feeling like you're living in those times and seeing what's going on,
Yeah.
and then putting it in the context of just before the Impressionists came on board, when the Salon, France declared war on Prussia, and Prussia almost starved Paris to death. People were eating the animals in the zoo and things like that. So, that bit of history really gets you to understand
Yeah.
it wasn't a good time for the Impressionists. They all suffered during that period, including Monet, who was probably one of the most successful, because he lived the longest. He died in 1921 or 22. So, but I find the human interest stories in those artists, I didn't know them in my earlier days, but I find them fascinating now.
Yeah.
And seeing the person who's making the painting,
Hmm.
you know, why are they making that painting? What's driving them? And and they're going against odds of selling them, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they don't really, they're hoping it sells, but they're not prostituting themselves to make it look like something else just to sell it, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Wow.
And the Lighthouse Art Center, I got to say this is,
Yeah, please.
I are very, very special, and they do an outstanding job. The board is actually involved in the classes as well as the events that happen.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to the other places, and I won't say which ones.
Yeah.
Many of them are, you get a few people who are that way,
Mm-hmm.
but the majority of them are really there to broadcast themselves or to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a way their collection will be preserved or something of importance.
Yeah.
People at the lighthouse are doing it because they love it and they are involved in it, and it shows.
Mm-hmm.
It shows like in all the events that you do, you care about the people who are coming to it as well as the artists who are there,
Mm-hmm.
and it's real people involved in art. I know I was initially involved in recommending that if you want to do an event that's going to have a big impact over time, do a plein air event. You can just start it out with a 1 day thing.
Yeah.
Or a 2 day weekend. And Katie Dietz was the director at the time.
Mm-hmm.
For 5 years before that, I was telling the Old School Square, you ought to do this because that's what we did up in New York.
Yeah.
On the Hudson River, we had artists from New York City all the way to Albany, and we chose 75 artists that were selected every year. And we'd meet, they'd give them a box lunch, and they'd indicate where they were going to paint, and then they brought their paintings back, and then we auctioned them off under the tent. And we did that every spring and every fall. And I told Katie that, and I says, you won't make a lot of money for the first time or two, but this will become your biggest event or money raiser.
Yeah.
And what I think it is, and I think it is the most exciting.
Oh, so much fun. It's so fun. Yeah. Yeah. That's yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, I completely agree with you about Lighthouse, and I think it's I think you're spot on, and I think the plein air festival is just the most fun. It's definitely the most fun of the year, and it definitely brings in a very substantial amount of money, and yeah, and it's just it's such a good time. I think it exhausts everyone afterwards, but it's worth it.
You wind up hosting 30 some odd artists, in homes where the hosts are just tremendous people. I don't see that anywhere else in Palm Beach County, in Martin County. It's just it hasn't caught on.
Yeah.
That in itself is awesome. Inviting the artists into your home, giving them a place to stay where they can really focus on painting rather than commuting or whatever. And it's awesome. Over the top.
Yeah.
I know some other places that do that, but I don't even think it's to the extent that you guys do it.
Yeah. Well, I can't take any credit for that, but I think that they do a wonderful job of plein air. I want to start to wrap up, but so just to make sure that I have heard you correctly, because I'm hearing themes within what you're talking about. I did my thesis that was using Bourdieu, some French sociologist, Pierre Bourdieu, and he talks about the field of cultural production, and essentially to make it as an artist in the field of cultural production, you have to be different. And it feels like that's what what I'm hearing from you is your commitment to authenticity, to being yourself, to telling, to being honest about and how the story and the history not only is what is interesting about it, but also is what makes art valuable, and I think worthwhile to have the story and the history and the honesty. What what is the legacy that you hope to to leave behind?
That's something I think about all the time. I worry about all the time is what happens to the art after I'm gone. You know, particularly as I get up there in years. This summer I'll be 85, but I feel young as ever. Other than my laryngitis, I am in good shape. I got all my
Play
original,
there. You're good.
and I'm hoping I can do. But in reality, you know, if somebody lives to 90, my God, that's an expansive life. So that's only 10 years away. So I also think about, I don't want to be spending a lot of time on each painting. I want to get absorbed into the creation of it and working it into, and not overly finish it. You know, I want people to finish it in their own eyes and what have you. So all of these paintings, there's so much more I want to paint, and there's so little time to do it. And when I looked at them in chronological sequence, I start to understand them better as to where it's going, and I can see better now where I want to go. I am. My wife worries about this too. She says, "Why are you painting more? You haven't sold all of them yet. Why are you painting?" And I said, "The joy in me is not so much selling them. I'm not interested. It's a nice thing when they sell that somebody liked something you did, but the joy is in painting them, and the process of painting them is better than the end finished project. You know, because when the painting is finished, it's stagnant. It'll always be that image. But sometimes if you took a picture of it the day before you finished it, it's much more vibrant, and you can see where it's going, and people can see how they would finish it. So I like the idea of not necessarily finishing them to the nth degree and doing more paintings and getting more. And that's what I'm teaching in my Alla Prima class. And we got 3 hours to do a painting, and we're going to try and finish it, at least get the one layer in, maybe 2 layers. And I want you to be doing these where your heart's into it and your dance moves are into your brushstrokes. So the legacy I see is having these paintings safe and secure somewhere where they're not thrown out. And I know a lot of other artists that I know, and I respect their work. And I saw terrible things happen with their paintings where they went out, or people said, "Well, this isn't important," and they tore it up. Picasso, I think I read a couple of books on Picasso. I think when I gathered it, there's a book called My Life with Picasso by one of his muses. She wrote the 10-year period, and they had 2 children together. He didn't want anybody writing on him unless he knew what they were writing. You know, he wanted to control the press. He tried to hide some early paintings that might show that he wasn't always a genius. You know, he would let things into there where you can see the work was controlled, that he was a genius always. And I don't like to do that. So, like, even things, don't rip up the painting. Be honest with you. Learn from the painting. If you don't make mistakes, you don't learn anything. So, in looking at your painting, just sign and date them. And if you thought that they were pretty good at the time, leave them.
Yeah.
Don't keep going back to them. Do another one, because you may be in a different mood that's changing what you want to achieve. So all of these paintings are all part of the story. And I'd like them to be intact at some point where somebody over time can look back at them and not destroy them, but just archive them and then just do shows from it. Because I'm enjoying painting them. I hope that sometime later on somebody can enjoy seeing them and understand the paintings better by seeing them in a new light.
Yeah.
So the legacy would be, I don't want to be somebody that I'm not.
Yeah.
I want them to enjoy the painting, see something of me in it. I'd love to be able to have them look back and the work that I did in my 20s and recognize that's the same person that I'm doing in my plein air paintings in the 1990s, 1980s, and 70s, and where they wouldn't think it was the same person.
Yeah.
But if you look at some key things in there, this stayed the same, this changed, you know.
Will you be exhibiting any of the work from your very?
I had talked to a couple of people that have some of those paintings, and I have some of them because I won't part with some of them that are very
Yeah,
meaningful.
yeah,
And intend to include them.
yeah,
And Annie, I just want to tell you, you may not know it. Before your mom came to me and before Jan came to me about this show coming up, which
yeah,
I'm amazed that
yeah,
you got so happy that you're doing
yeah.
it. The Elliott Museum, you know, the Elliott
Yeah, yeah, of
Museum.
course.
The director of that, or the CEO, is Rob Steele.
Yeah.
Rob's a wonderful person, and I know him. He used to be at Old School Square as the director there.
Okay, cool.
He told me 2 months ago, before you guys told me, he wants to do a retrospective of my work
Oh,
in
yeah. Awesome.
in the in that museum in the upstairs room, and so I don't want it to be the same, but I want it to
Yeah,
some key things different. And what I'd like to offer you, you know me, I like to do the videos of things.
yeah,
I might, from the book, do a video of the over the time, and I'd like to offer that for Manon if she has some work that she wants to set up, how she sees it,
yeah,
as well as each of the artists, that we can see a retrospective
yeah.
here to there.
I think that would be super cool. I think talk to I'll put it down. But I mean, you could definitely have it on the. I would think. I mean, I'm just in charge of doing the didactics, but have it on the screen.
Yeah.
I think that would be amazing. I think if it's, I would understand not wanting to do the same exhibition, twice, but I think at least have the video, and I think also have the book, and that can be like on a little pedestal or something, just to be able to see, some of your other paintings and how you've come and. I just think that would be, I would love to see it personally. I want to see, I almost don't believe it. Again, even in thinking about, I've always, I've always loved your work. I've always loved you as a human being also. And, but I think I can see you and your work. I think if you gave me, 1,000 paintings, I could pick out which one are yours, which,
if I might, let me do
yeah, please. Oh, whoa. Oh my God.
It's like a coffee table book.
Yeah. Cool.
It's a book that I used to self-publish.
Yeah.
Would publish it and order 2 copies, one for the person who bought a painting.
Yeah.
I would include it in there because it would cost me about $120 with shipping to have the book.
Yeah.
But just to give you an idea, here's me painting that Hopper painting. But I just want to show you, and this is the. Wait a minute here. Let me just.
Oh my God.
Where's the camera? There's the camera.
A bit right down. There we go. Whoa.
The Van Gogh.
That is awesome.
That's a 3 foot by 4 foot painting, and then.
Where's that now?
That's sold on opening night at the Artists Guild Gallery in Boca Raton.
Of course that's sold. That's incredible. Wow.
A tribute to Hopper.
Oh my gosh.
And here he is from his self-portrait called The Artist with the Hat, and a painting of his where they're on the brownstones overlooking Central Park in New York City. Here is one of my paintings that I did of my wife in Iran in 1978, leaning up against his painting. And on the steps of it's my wife and I from the 60s, instead of the 2 people he put there.
Yeah.
And then the other part of the trilogy is
wow.
Picasso.
Yeah.
And this is Picasso's wives, lovers, and family all in one painting. And in the very back, all the way in the back, there's a little kid sitting on the floor.
Yeah.
That's me from my kindergarten picture.
Yeah.
When I was 5. When I was 5, he was 64. So
wow.
these were the 3, but I want to show you my early
please. Oh my gosh.
I was painting a lot like Hopper, and I didn't know who Hopper was. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until the 70s that I realized, oh my God, I love his work. Who is this guy? But this is
Wow.
my early paintings,
My
um,
gosh.
dark, brooding. Um,
Cool. Wow.
yeah, Rembrandtish. Like
Yeah, 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 for sure.
nobody would buy these paintings and put on their walls. Too depressing. But I loved
Amazing.
see like
Wow.
so the early stuff leading to the later stuff.
Wow.
Plein air painting loosened me up, introduced color,
Yeah.
changed me totally. That was in the 1980s. But like here, plein air paintings in Palm Beach
Yeah.
County.
Oh, these are
And
gorgeous.
I started the plein air teaching down here,
Yeah.
Middle School Square, and also the group called Plein Air Palm Beach. I was co-founder of that.
Yeah.
Today we have lots of people going out there and painting plein air.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy about that.
Wow. Have you shown this book to Jenny?
No, I don't think so. I think I might have showed it last year to Seren.
I would show it to Jenny. I think it would even be nice. I mean, I definitely think there needs to be a copy of that there, and maybe
I'll,
an
I'll
opportunity to
certainly
even
include it.
and I honestly, I think that there could be a way to get a couple of copies in the art store. That's incredible, Ralph.
Well,
It's so, I mean, it's just, that's so cool. And I mean, I think that's amazing.
I didn't realize it at the time I was making a book, but it is a big help in explaining
Yeah.
what I'm doing.
Yeah. I would really like to buy one, for my parents. I want it for myself, but we have a very small house. In their house, I want one. How can I get one?
When are you coming back to visit?
I'm going to the States this summer, but right now only going to Maryland is the plan. I think that's incredible, and I think I just don't think I would be the only one that would be interested in seeing the progression of your work. I mean, it's so cool to just to hear a little bit about your story and that. I mean, it's you're just a pure artist, from the beginning, and to see the progression, to see where you are now, and I would just, I mean, I would love to learn more, but I would love to see more of your work, and um, I, I'm really excited about what you've said here today for the didactics. I think it has a really good through line, and there's some similarities in your commitment to authenticity with Eduardo, which is nice just to have some kind of similarity there, but obviously also completely different perspectives. And I don't know. I'm. It's a lot to go through, but I'm really excited to.
I love to see when they lay out the exhibition thoughts
It's gonna
of
be awesome.
the 60th anniversary of the
Yeah.
Lighthouse Art Center and various photographs from the different periods
Yeah.
there,
Hmm.
seeing how it grew,
Oh yeah.
with the artist. So we can almost pinpoint where was Manon at this time,
Yeah.
where was
Yeah.
and looking for where we didn't know each other. Here's where we were and
Mm.
what's going on. A coincidence. In 2014, I was at the time president of the Boca Museum
Mhm.
Artists Guild.
Cool.
And we had a guild of 300 members, and yourself, like it's hard. It's a volunteer organization.
Mhm.
Usually have 2% um, um, that really do all the work, and
Yeah.
then there's another 2% that really cause all the problems. They
Yeah.
don't want to do any work, but they don't want to volunteer for it.
Yeah.
It's a real learning process of trying to do a volunteer group.
Yeah.
But a later president came in and went back to me to interview me,
Mhm.
and he had interview questions. And if you like, I can send you the questions and the
Yeah.
responses to it,
Yeah.
because it covered some of the same ground that we talked about today.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I want to like I went to I was quite inspired. I went to last summer to the Brandywine Wyeth Museum, which was so cool, and I was really impressed by the didactics. I felt like they were actually interesting, and I think at so many I feel like at so many museums and galleries the didactics just aren't interesting, and I want to know that story. I want to and that's what I'm hoping. This is my first time ever doing this kind of task, and it's because we're in between curators. The next one's going to be awesome. Really excited about him coming in, but I'm really excited to share your guys' stories. I think it's going to be great.
I'm so looking forward to it. I'm besides myself in the news that you guys are doing this.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
It's going to be a nice long exhibition too, and then you'll have all of the campers that get to learn about your different styles, which I think will be very cool. A cool change from some past summer exhibitions. I think it's going to be awesome. I'm really excited, and yeah. So I'm gonna have you. I'll send you an email because I wanna get the book, but and then send the interview when you get a chance. And if I might have some extra questions as I go through it, I'll just send you an email. We can either pop on Zoom again, or you can type out the answers, whatever best suits you. And
the class I teach at the Lighthouse, the Alla Prima class,
yeah,
it's a joy to teach it because I'm actually teaching them ways to do this stuff, not just the painting, but a lot of my time is driving them to give them the motivation to do this.
Yeah.
And how important it will be in their lives, where they first come into class thinking, oh, this is nice to do, but I don't think I can really do this. I want them to know that they are special, that only they could do the paintings that are yet to come to do.
Yeah.
And even if they're not done in the fashion where they're exceptionally photographic or whatever, having their natural DNA and their stuff coming through is the joy. And then I always tell them, I teach them how to critique their own paintings. Number one, when you're done with it, even if you think it's rather good or what have you, you look at it and you say, what can I take out of this that will make it look better, to me? And after you look at that and you make a change, maybe because of that, and it could be something like, I'm taking this tree out because not essential. And it just gets away. The next question would be, what can I move that will make it look better as a painting in its composition? And the last resort would be, what do I have to add to make it? Of course, adding things makes it more complicated. But if you can simplify by taking something out and make it look better. So I teach them this in not only looking at their own work, but looking at any painting, even in a gallery or in a museum. If they look at a master's work, they may have difficulty saying, what can I take out? There might be nothing you take out, nothing you can move, nothing you can add, because it's perfect in that way. But usually you'll find something. And I use a lot of the master's work. And I even find things that they would take out today and looking at it, the things that even Edward Hopper, who's a wonderful thing on perspective, not only within your personal life, but also in your vision. He did a portrait of a Portsmouth lighthouse, and the perspective is off.
Yeah.
I didn't notice it till I took my wife to a doctor's office and the painting was on the wall. I'm looking at it and say, nah, not Edward Hopper. And it was obviously wrong, but I didn't want to believe it.
Yeah.
So I gave it to my students at the Lighthouse and said, what's wrong with this? Was there something here that's... And a couple of them picked up on it after they looked at the test.
Yeah.
But these are the things that really make them grow. and little tidbits that helps them to see things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Yeah.
Annie, you're great at this. You make me
Oh,
feel very comfortable.
oh well, thank you. It's been, I'm really grateful to be able to interview you and be part of this exhibition in a small way. And yeah, it is just really nice to hear a bit more about your story and where why you paint and like what's in your heart with the painting. And it makes sense. Thank you.
You know, and I won't go too long on this, but
Yeah,
in my life, I have a lot of different facets. Like I told you,
yeah,
in school, a lot of times when I was working for a living, I've always painted nights and weekends. And my artist friends didn't know I had a real job, a job that was putting foot on.
yeah,
And the job that I was in, I wound up being a director of engineering and
yeah,
installation,
yeah, yeah,
communications. And they didn't know I was an artist because I didn't talk about that. Because if you told them you were an artist, they would say, "Well, you're treating then the job yeah, you're not putting your heart and soul into it.
yeah,
You got your somewhere else." So they want to believe that, and I every job that I did, I put my heart and soul in. There was no way I could do a job
mhm.
that's called half-assed. It would be the
Yeah,
term.
yeah, yeah.
If if there was something that had to be done on the weekends or nights, I did that.
Mhm,
But I tried to keep them separate.
mhm.
That one didn't know each other, and in my life, the people that I met in my jobs are just as important to me and meaningful to me
Mhm.
as people in my art career that I knew. People in my Navy time in the Navy during the Cold War. It'd be a part of a flight crew to just hunt Russian submarines. And I'm still very close with the people that I flew with in all that
Yeah.
time.
Wow.
I'm president of my Navy Alumni Association, which is
Wow.
based in Jacksonville. So all these things, I don't treat them as separate, but
Yeah.
they're all part of the picture.
Yeah.
Well, the one picture where you saw 5 people in there
Mhm.
with my Navy crew when we were being debriefed, and
Yeah.
that was 1960, where we have the crew members. And that painting takes me back, and I own that painting. I gave a copy of it to the squadron up in Jacksonville.
Oh.
All these periods of life are all important to me.
Mhm.
The people that are in it are all important.
Mhm.
It's only now in my later life where they know what I was doing in the other periods. So
Mhm. I believe that. I think I see that in you. I think that you again. I've always just adored you so much, and I feel like it's because you are full of love and you are present and you're just a light. And knowing that all of these different periods and people mean something to you. I believe that, and it's
and I'll leave you with reiterating that thought.
yeah,
Art overflows into every subject and every facet of our lives.
yeah,
And it's not like some people say, well, you're doing your art, so I feel you're excluding me.
yeah,
It's not that way. It's art to me, I can't separate it from who I am. It's like eating or breathing,
hmm, hmm,
or it's not an added thing. It's part of
yeah, yeah,
how
yeah,
I breathe.
yeah,
So and I can't. I'll get depressed.
yeah.
I don't paint for a week or two,
Wow.
and my wife knows that.
Yeah,
She's
yeah, yeah. It gives you make sure you if you're feeling down, get you
I
some
would
paint in a canvas.
my one dream, and I almost give up, is to teach my wife that she can do this too, and she can paint. But it not having a lot of luck. She won't try. It's like not her thing. But I know I could teach her,
Yeah.
and we can do everything together in art. It's just we're married 60 years this September.
Congratulations.
I know her, 62.
Yeah, yeah.
And I met her painting her on the beach in Rockaway, New York.
Amazing.
So it's part of our lives.
Incredible. I hope I hold hope that one day she will try to learn.
I want to take her to Italy and we do all the
Yeah.
painting. And if I go to Italy, maybe I can figure a way to come visit you in
That'd
Amsterdam.
be awesome. And I can I don't know if you'd be interested because it's a bit different, but I do know Van Gogh's great great grandnephew, Louis Van Gogh. I went to his studio. He doesn't have a good connection with the Van Gogh Museum, and he told me that his entire family, they donated all of Van Gogh's art. He wishes that they would have, saved one painting would have been nice for them to save, but they donated all to the Dutch government many years ago. But yeah, he's quite intense himself.
Probably got that intensity from his.
Oh, I think it runs in the family. But a very cool artist. Really different stuff. I'll send you his work just to I don't know
I'd
if
love
you're
to see it.
interested because during COVID I worked with him. My friend owns owns 8, I think, restaurants here. And Lua Van Gogh worked as the sous chef in the same restaurant. I worked there for just a month as a waitress. But after COVID and then it shut down the restaurants, he had done a little bit of painting here and there, but then he decided to like fully dive into it, and he started using the squeeze bottles and like knives and stuff that he had used in the restaurant to do paintings, which when I send you his work, that might make a bit more sense. Some of his work is a bit the subject matter is not it's a bit dark and wild, but some of the stuff's very cool, and but anyway.
Um, if you see him in the future,
Yeah.
let him know about the secret life of sunflowers of Joanna Van Gogh. Her story. It's very personal. When around the time Vincent Van Gogh died, 6 months later, Theo dies, and Joanna's left with a 9-month-old child as a woman without a husband. She's from a middle class family in Holland. She goes back to Paris where the paintings are and the letters are, not knowing what she can do with this, but she wants to bring that to the world. Her brother, who she respects very much, looks at the work and tells her, "You're wasting your time with their work. It's not of a high level. I would take the stretchers and sell them for firewood, and just cut up the canvases for aprons." And he's serious about that and telling her. She says, "I can't do it." She knows how much her husband respected Vincent's work.
Yeah.
And she read many of the letters, and she really believed in him and respected her husband. So she was on like a 20-year campaign of making this happen. And I value what she did
Yeah.
at least as much as what Vincent Van Gogh and Theo did.
Sure. Yeah.
Unbelievable story.
No credit.
And I'd like to get the grandnephews.
Yeah.
Let them know of those writings.
Yeah.
And see his thoughts on that.
Yeah, I will. It's always these characters that don't get a lot of credit that end up making a big difference. It's been so wonderful chatting with you, and we'll be in touch. Just thank you so much for making the time and for sharing. And yeah, it's been really wonderful.
Thank you, Annie, and call up me anytime.
I will. Have a great day, and get better soon, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Bye, Ralph.